You know, Kat, you could be the very first person ever. In fact, you are the first person ever that said they want to live in Colville.
Area.
Okay. I've never heard anybody say that before.
No offense to Colville.
No offense to Colville, but I've never heard anyone say that.
It's a good area.
Now, Chewelah does have, I think, a giant magnet for attracting artistic types.
Yes, I think
we've
so.
got, I think, more artists in Chewelah per capita than anywhere else in the country, or at least darn close. I'm making that up, shooting from the hip. But all right. So, when did you start writing?
Well, my earliest documented writing was when I was 5 years old.
Okay, and that was?
It was a picture book.
Okay.
Amazing. I haven't gone very far from there, have I?
It looks the same. I see lots of picture books and some pictures.
Well, actually, with photographs in these, I've moved up just a little bit.
Now, did you attend some schooling to hone your craft?
I majored in English, but since that really doesn't ever seem to get anyone anywhere, I kind of just kept writing and stopped schooling.
Well, you brought in, if people are watching on the webcam, you can kind of see there's a ton of stuff on the counter that she brought in, from books to awards to even hold up that picture that you took. That's very cool. Hold it up right in front of you, then they can maybe see it on the webcam. It's pretty small. And if you're listening and you want to watch on the webcam, don't forget kchw.org. Click on the listen page and you'll find the webcam there. All right, Kat, very first thing that you published.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Unless it's inappropriate or something.
No, it's just terrible. And I actually had it unpublished. It was Lust for Danger, and it actually won some awards, and I had 2 movie options for it. But I wrote it in the 80s, and it's very 80s, and today I don't think it's very good. So I actually pulled it down, and I'm going to be rewriting it.
Wow. But back then, they wanted to make a movie out of it. That's cool.
Yeah.
And you were humiliated by the story. You still are. You're like, it's one of your most
terrible.
Embarrassing moments.
Yeah, kind of.
Like,
it's
kind
terrible.
of like that picture of me in the 80s wearing spandex. I will not pop that up.
Depends on the color, I think.
Yeah, it was multicolored. I think it looked like the paint splash spandex. I thought I was a rock star. All right, so that was your first book.
Yes.
And apparently it went really well, but you didn't like
it.
it.
I got a lot of great 5-star reviews for it, but it just, for me, it's embarrassing.
We could do that movie trailer voice guy for it. The new movie that's coming out, Lust for Danger, by K.S. Brooks. How's that? Pretty
catchy
good?
Title.
Yeah, not so much? All right. Now, you've probably one of the most, I don't want to jump too far ahead.
Hey, whatever you want.
Okay. Where did you kind of go from there after that book?
Children's books.
Children's books.
Action adventure. I'm ADHD, so I just kind of go all over the place. And the first book I wrote was about a 300-year-old oak tree in my backyard in Maryland, because I saw my neighbor's little boys beating trees with bats, and I'm like, oh gosh, the kids, their parents just were never around, and I felt like I needed to do something to teach kids about trees, and so I wrote The Mighty Oak and Me. And my publisher said, yep, let's do it. And so that got published, I think it was 2009. So.
And where do you go from there?
Well, I ended up sort of adopting a very adorable Jack Russell Terrier named Mr. Pish, and that's with a P, not an F, like fish. It's Pish. And we traveled cross country. We drove from Maryland here to Chewelah, and every place he went was like the best place ever. And I thought,
well, he's a terrier.
Yeah, I know. He's a really unique terrier. He's a rough coat Jack Russell with one ear up and one ear down, and one eye has like a pink pigment around it, and the other's got a black one, and kids just loved him. And I thought, if I could use him as a vehicle for kids to learn about getting outside and all the great places that we have around us, this would be fabulous. And it kind of took off, and it was sort of an accident. And it started out, my best friend said, oh, you should write about all the places you go, write about your feelings. And I'm like, No. That's, to me, that's really boring. But to write about it from a dog's point of view, to get kids interested, I think would work really well. And his books are used in schools all over the world. We got about 40 postcards from a kindergarten class in Guadalajara, Mexico. Of course, we can't read any of them because they're in Spanish, but it was really cool. And, I get invited all over. I was recently, I've been doing a lot down in Whitman County, and recently the Colton School gave me this adorable Wildcat Award.
Aw, as in Wildcat. Yeah.
But
Cool.
what happened was I went down there to talk to them, and they invited me back to spend their last day, like their recreation day, with them. And I couldn't do it because I was working at the newspapers, and I work at the Chewelah Independent and the Silverado Express. And so I decided to surprise them and come down for their graduation instead. And it was their awards day, and so they said to their teacher, "Can we please give her an award?" I'm going to cry. It was so sweet. So the principal actually gave me that award in front of everyone. And it's for favorite and best author photographer. It's so adorable. It's definitely one of my favorite things ever.
All right.
It's
All
neat.
right. So tell us, so Mr. Fish, that kind of evolved, and that's a Pish. Sorry, that's how I kind of heard about you. What was before I'd ever met you or whatever. I'd heard about your book.
Love that.
So now the dog's been gone for a while. I'm sorry.
Yes, thank
but,
you.
But the memory carries on.
Yeah, I try to keep his legacy going with more books. And the last book that we did was this. I personally like it a lot. It is a activity book to celebrate the National Park Centennial birthday, which was 2 years ago now, I guess.
All right.
It'll be 2 years this August. And so that's very fun. I've got crossword puzzles and pictures and coloring and all for all ages. It's not just for kids.
Oh,
So-
neat. That's kind of a different book, huh?
Yeah, it was very fun. It was a lot of work, but it was very fun to do it. And he's been to so many of the national parks. And he's been to 41 states and 7 provinces of Canada. And I've been to all 50 states and I think 8 provinces of Canada.
Yeah, so that dog got around.
He did.
All right. All right, so you've done some other stuff too. Maybe
Yes.
I think you told me at Chautauqua, was there a romance novel in there somewhere?
I have a romantic comedy called Triple Dog Dare, which actually Hollywood's looking at right now.
Oh wow!
Yeah,
all
so
right.
that's pretty cool.
So how do you market a book to Hollywood and get it in front
If
of the
I
right
tell
people?
you, I have to kill you.
Okay, wow, whatever. Because I know you're doing a class on publishing, so we'll
I
talk
do.
about that too.
I do.
But that's cool to have at least somebody looking at turning your book into a screenplay. Huh?
Yeah, and somebody's looking at this one too, which was not my intention
Night
at all.
Undone.
Yeah.
By K.S. Brooks.
Yeah, there's The Kiss of Night and Night Undone, and those are both Agent Knight. She is an anti-terrorist agent.
Well, and we're kind of in that era right now where women being superheroes and super tough and taking those roles, they're getting really popular. More and more tough girls. You know.
1980s, I was writing that, and it's funny because my boss at the Silverado constantly gets phone call complaints. Why KS? Why KS? Why doesn't she use her name? And it's just like, because in the 80s, women didn't write action adventure. It was all Clancy and, all those guys.
So you chose.
So I decided, well, Angela Lansbury, she's there on Murder, She Wrote. And it's, J.B. Fletcher. And I'm like, K.S. Brooks.
All
That's
right.
awesome. I have to do that.
People actually call the newspaper and complain because
Yeah.
you're using letters instead of your name.
Yeah, they do.
Really?
Yeah.
Those are the people with nothing to do.
Well, what's
Too much time on their hands.
I'm too much.
time on my hands?
There you go.
Oh, yeah, music trivia.
So what do we do with those people? No, I'm just kidding.
Well, I actually did I've been offering my boss to write a column about, my name. And she's like, no, I kind of get a kick out of it. But this past month, she's like, yes, could you please? So
Wow.
So I actually have a column coming out in the August edition about that.
Why I don't use my name. Huh.
Well, what's funny is she'll say, you can just call her Kat. It's fine. And they'll be like, well, I want to know why, though.
Well, it's like in radio that you change your name to avoid stalkers and people picking on you and finding out where you live and all that kind of stuff. More important, probably in a city like Spokane when you work there. But I was like under the bus when I came to Chewelah. And every now and then, I usually just say Scott, but I went for decades as Scott Allen. Then I ended up at a job that there was too many Scotts, so I had to pick a different name, and my boss picked Steve Knight for me. So I ended up working for KXLY, and I was Steve Knight for 10 years.
Wow.
And then you kind of become that person, and people call you Steve. They're using your stage name, not your real name and stuff. So if there was about probably about 15 years there where if you said Steve or Scott, I'd turn around and look. And what's weird is when people call me by the wrong name, 99.9% of the time, it's Steve instead of Scott. So I thought that was kind of strange. So I get the whole name swapping thing, but it didn't work in Chewelah. When I call myself Scott Allen, because I don't want to say Schloffman on the air, it's too long and sounds like you got marbles in your mouth. I get flack when I get out on the street. Why aren't you using your last name? Well, you try and say it on the radio.
Well, you could just change
when you get tongue-tied with your own name,
At least it's not Venus Flytrap.
Yeah. All right, so
WKRP, if anyone didn't get that.
Yes. What did he get fired? The other guy, Dr. Johnny Fever, got fired for saying booger on the radio. I just did it too. All right, so what's the book that kind of caught my eye there? What is it?
A bad book.
A bad book. Why would that catch my eye? Because there's a guy with a Star Trek shirt on the front of the cover. So what's that book about?
That book actually, that book's kind of a bizarre story. I got this idea because a lot of people were publishing books. When self-publishing first came out, people were like writing notes on napkins and hitting the publish button, and it was disastrous. I mean, just so much junk out there. So I decided, well, let's write something really bad. If people think bad stuff gets published, let's write something bad. And actually it turned out really good, but it's a satire, and we basically trash every single thing in pop culture you can think of.
Oh, how fun.
It's kind of like Hot Shots Part 2 or An Airplane and all of those mixed
some
together.
Of my favorite movies. All right.
Yeah, it's very adolescent boy type thing,
love it.
and I'm very proud that I took part in that.
I'd love that because my favorite probably comedian and funny movies of all time is Leslie Nielsen in the Naked Gun series.
Oh, he's so good.
To me, there was just not his deadpan. There was nothing like it. I loved Leslie Nielsen. All right, are we missing anything on these books? And then I want to talk about publishing. No,
that's all right.
All right. So how, do you keep a fresh number in your head of how many books that you have written?
No.
No?
I lost track at like 30.
All right, so where would be like the easiest place to go find some of your novels if people want to check them out?
Thank you. On Amazon.com.
All right.
You can just search for K.S. Brooks or any of the book titles.
Okay.
And they should come up. And
All right.
Mr. Pish, he has his own author page with all of his books and calendars. He also has a calendar each year and an app, which is free for Android users. You can download that through the Google Store. Sorry, Apple people, you have to pay. So, yeah, 99 cents. Ooh. But he also has T-shirts online, too, Mr. Pish approved.
All right.
So, yeah.
All right. So he kind of turned into having his own little following, huh?
Yeah, kind of.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
All right. So do you run a website then, too, or just kind of find you on Amazon?
I have a website, ksbrooks.com, mrpish.com. Mr. Pish is also on Facebook, so am I.
And don't make the mistake of saying fish. It's with a P, Pish. All right. So you do a class.
Yes, I do. I teach self-publishing. I also run a website for writers. It was touted as one of the top 6 sites in the world for writers by Publishers Weekly magazine. And it's called indiesunlimited.com. And you can go there. Everything is free for authors. We do not charge for anything, which is why I'm broke. But in any case, everything from writing, the art of writing, to editing and publishing, formatting your novel, marketing, everything. We cover it all.
Wow. Now, you've taught this class at a local library, too, haven't you?
Yes, I've taught it at all the Stevens County libraries, almost all. Kettle, Colville, Chewelah, and I also teach it for the community colleges of Spokane. I teach a 2-hour intensive on it.
All right. Do you have another class coming up anytime soon?
August 20th, August 23rd, I believe, at the Magnuson Hall. And then I have a bunch coming up this fall in Spokane Valley, Newport, Spokane, and Colfax.
So I'm guessing you run a Facebook page too? No?
I do, but I don't really.
I'm just trying to give people ways to check out your work or follow you around or catch your next class, that kind of stuff. So.
Oh, well, that's very sweet of you.
Right.
Thank you.
Right.
But yeah, facebook.com/author KS Brooks. That's my personal page, and it's a public profile. You can just follow me, and you'll see what I'm up to.
So that way,
there.
when you're going to it, you got a class coming up, maybe they can find out that way too.
Oh,
or
yeah.
something like
Yeah,
that.
I posted in events.
So now you talked about having a publisher before. So
Yes.
so now are you in a situation where you're doing it yourself, or do you have a publisher?
Well, I had a publisher up until about 2 years ago, and I decided that because the landscape is changing so much, it didn't make sense to have a middleman and have a publisher taking care of my stuff. I had enough experience. I've been published by a publisher since 2001, and I had about 8 books through her. And in 2011, I wanted to publish this short story that is like Archer meets Sin City. Sorry, because I got the name of the story, which is Dark Alley, stuck in my head, and I couldn't think of Sin City. And she's like, no, this is way too warped for me. So I decided, well, I'll just do it myself because, self-publishing had just become big. And so I started self-publishing in 2011 with that story. I compiled it with some short stories and poetry from another friend who's a writer, and we published Odd and Otter, which is actually a free ebook through Amazon and Smashwords. You can download that, and I think iTunes also has it for free. And so after that, I just said, well, this is pretty cool. And I got into Indies Unlimited. I was invited by the founder, Stephen Heiss, to help him when he first started the site. And then I just kept self-publishing, and I thought to myself, this is going way better than my books through my publisher because they have to take a cut. So even though I got 50% royalties, they were getting 50% too, which meant my prices were way higher than my self-published books. So at the end of 2016, she actually retired, and I was just about to ask her for my rights back so that I could republish everything, self-publish it. And so the timing just worked out well, and now my stuff is available at much better prices. For
Everything
people.
you've done
Yep.
with them too. Oh, neat.
Yep,
Neat.
everything.
So when she retired, it released the
rights.
the rights that she
Yep.
had on that stuff.
Yep.
Wow. Very cool.
Thank you.
So what would you say as far as self-publishing? You definitely more money doing it yourself?
I think it's just smarter. I know that there are a lot of older people out there who are not technologically savvy and have a little bit of a hard time, but it really is worth it to do it yourself. And a lot of people are paying thousands and thousands of dollars to get published, and they should not be doing that. Those people are not publishers. Publishers make their money off readers, not writers. And so these people, they're getting ripped off. So
right.
that's the main reason I teach self-publishing, is to keep people from falling prey to predatory publishers.
And it's probably the same thing as the music industry. The new digital landscape has changed everything, where you don't need to be
Right.
signed by the record company to accidentally become world famous.
No.
You just need the right YouTube video.
Exactly.
And there goes your, and I was watching a longtime musician, and he was complaining about it, how they can't, make any money through the record companies and iTunes because all these fly-by-night bands that come up and become popular. And he was complaining about it, how, but taking it from a elitist attitude. Well, I'm this professional musician who's been with a record company for 20 years, and here comes this Yahoo on YouTube who's, outselling me, and has no record company behind them. And
Yep.
I don't know. I think it's cool because it gets more of the art out there to more people.
I think so too. And people, back in the 80s and 90s, in the beginning of the 2000s, it was impossible to get published. It didn't matter how talented you were because there was that velvet rope there and you couldn't get around it. And now, unfortunately, everybody can do it, but fortunately, everybody can do it.
Yeah. It's got some drawbacks too, but
Yeah,
I'm sure.
it does.
All right. Did we miss anything you were hoping to talk about today?
My friend Nick Forrestal messaged me this morning and said, you better say something cool on the radio. So for Nick, in my best radio voice, something cool.
Ooh.
There you go. Had to get that in there.
And Jim raised his hand. You had a question?
Yeah, I was curious. Like when you write a book like this book, do you sit down and write it all at once, or do you write a little bit at a time, or
it really depends on the book. With Bad Book and Triple Dog Dare, I wrote with partners. And that's really good for me because I'm so ADHD, and it's like they write, and then I feel like I have to be really responsible and respond in kind. So things get done much quicker that way. The Kiss of Night I wrote for the American Heart Association to raise funds. So I wrote that one pretty quickly. Night Undone I wrote inside a month. I just sat down and didn't leave my chair. But my other books, I just have to really percolate for a long time, and some of them take me 10, 20 years.
How do you write a book with another author? That seems very difficult.
My writing partner, Stephen Heiss, is awesome. He will lay down the skeleton of it, and I'll come in and do what he calls Brooksify and put the meat on the bones and add the description and things like that. And it's just, he's fabulous to write with.
All right.
Unfortunately, he's retired. Steve, that makes me really angry if you're listening. But in any case, yeah, he's been great.
All right.
Yeah.
And so what's it like being a writer in Chewelah?
quiet but steady?
Well, there's something about Chewelah when I drive down 395 heading north into Chewelah.
When you come down the hill, like
When you
everybody
come down
says,
the
you come down the hill.
It's like decompression. There's just something so very soothing about this area that makes it a lot easier to write than anywhere else I've lived.
I've asked that question probably 100 times over the past 6 years, and everybody has the same answer. Except for a few people said, "What's the sign mean at the top of the hill?"
Dumb.
Sorry, Chamber. We're still trying to figure that one out.
Oh, my. Yeah.
That's the only thing, is before that feeling washes over me, I look at the sign kind of confused.
I look
And
at
then
the
I go,
sign and think, why doesn't it say home of Mr. Pish there?
"Oh." Or home of KCHW.
Yes.
All right. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank
Author
you.
K.S. Brooks, and find her on Amazon. You can simply Google or Amazon her name. You can't call it Google on Amazon. Amazon her name. Type it in the search box, K.S. Brooks. And you can find her on Facebook's Author K.S. Brooks, and your website one more time.
ksbrooks.com.
All right. And your personal phone. No, I'm just Round of applause. K.S.
Easy
Brooks.
now.
We call her Cat.
Thank you.
All right, we're going to roll back into that music with a little Alice Merton. We'll try to get around to some Oz news, too. If you stay right here, Northern Lights Public Radio, KCHW 102.7.